Most people are kind of indoctrinated to believe three erroneous ideas when it comes to finance. They believe that wealth is a function of three things: how much money are you willing to set aside, how much risk are you willing to take, and how long are you willing to wait. These kind of things actually don't create financial independence. Financial independence is when you have enough recurring revenue to cover your basic expenses from your assets. It's not about waiting for 30 years or tightening the belt or cutting out, traveling the world with your kids. It's about beginning by saying, where can we find money? It's leaking through your very fingers, money that's rightfully yours. You're working hard for it, and it's going to Wall Street. It's going to the government. It's going to banks and institutions. And if you want to see the evidence of this, you just look at any downtown of any big city, and guess what is? The biggest buildings are those institutions. The biggest employer in the nation is the government.
Welcome, everybody. I am Cory, Dr. Cory Frogley. Welcome to In the Blue podcast. We are so excited to have you guys with my very, very special guest. And I don't just introduce him as a special guest, but a very good friend of mine that I've known now for well over a decade and has been following him. In fact, I was following him before I had the honor and privilege of actually being his chiropractor for a while. I guess I should probably say still his chiropractor, but he's got many because he travels across the world. He is a health fanatic. And today we are going to be diving deep into one of the most powerful topics that we've been talking about in our community, and that is how to be wealthy now and later. And as you guys know, that is the driven way. And this concept of in the blue, as you guys know, with Blue IQ, we're always pushing our data, pushing our stats into that incredible growth phase. But sometimes that comes with what we perceive as sacrifice. And we've talked about that sacrificing our health and sacrificing our potential wealth for the well-being of our patients. And we love our patients. We want to get incredible results, but we have to really think about the economics of the business. And if we can get the business healthy, we actually end up helping more patients. And that is the driven way. So today we have an amazing masterclass diving into these concepts. And, Garrett has been doing this now for a couple decades, where he was very frustrated with the typical principles being taught in wealth management, just like we are so frustrated with health being taught completely backwards in typical mainstream. It has been incredible to watch some of the functional medicine and some of the breakthroughs and some of the leading chiropractors out there really getting their message heard, flipping healthcare on its head. And that is exactly what Garrett has done for the wealth industry. He has completely stepped in and showed the industry that what they were doing was completely upside down. He is now the best-selling author on the New York Times and on Amazon for his Killing Sacred Cows, which was the first book that I got to read of Garrett's about a decade ago. He also has written What Would the Rockefellers Do? And has just released Money Unmasked, which is quickly becoming one of the best sellers out there. I've read it. I loved it. I love the money personas. It really resonated with me, and especially working with patients and being able to recognize their personas. They sit in front of you talking about closing on care, right? Investing in themselves. So many gold nuggets in that book that you guys have to read. We have also had the privilege of watching Garrett on the comedy stage. When Garrett told me he was going into comedy, I always loved his presentations, but man, he has completely invested in this and has now released a show on Amazon Prime called The American Ream, which you have to catch. It is hilarious. You wouldn't think that money and comedy go together, but it works, and it works brilliantly. And I'm actually super excited to announce my Octo Inner Circle doesn't even know this yet. But Garrett, I'm going to take this opportunity to go ahead and announce that we've secured Garrett to come and speak at our Octo Inner Circle event in Park City, which is coming up, building the Olympic level team. And the presentation he's going to give there is going to blow your mind. So super excited to announce that. And without further ado, Garrett Gunderson, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time with me today to dive into this incredible topic.
Yeah, I love doing stuff with you, with your community. Glad that you reached out last year and had me come out to Orlando. You bought a bunch of money on mass books to get to people's hands. So love that. Yeah, excited about it.
Yeah, I was sitting at a conference again. This is more than a decade ago. Gosh, it was probably 15 years ago. And as you were sharing the principles from that first book of yours, Killing Sacred Cows, everything you were saying, it was exactly the way I thought. And I thought, this is weird because I've never heard a financial guy talk in terms that resonated with me as holistic health, thinking about holistic wealth. For those that are new to you or new to our audience, do you mind just kind of giving us, in a nutshell, like, why is your concepts different? Like, why are you turning the financial world upside down?
Look, most people are kind of indoctrinated to believe three erroneous ideas when it comes to finance. And this is all about one day, someday. And a lot of the things that get people to consider this is, hey, set it and forget it. Invest early, often, and always. Wait for 30 years and let compound interest get you there. And then one day, someday, you can finally retire when you're too old to actually enjoy your money. And so it's all about scrimping and saving and sacrificing and delaying. It's about taking too much risk. It's about waiting for far too long, all at the expense of cash flow or efficiency or investing in ourselves or growing our business. So it's actually at odds with actual wealth building, because the notion is they believe that wealth is a function of three things. How much money are you willing to set aside? How much risk are you willing to take? And how long are you willing to wait? So risk, waiting, these kind of things actually don't create financial independence. Financial independence is when you have enough recurring revenue to cover your basic expenses from your assets, whether that's entrepreneurial income, which is income that comes in the days you don't go to the office, or whether it's, things like real estate or intellectual property or, what other types of assets create cash flow along the way. And even more importantly, often it has this neglect financial health at the expense of like trying to get somewhere 30 years from today. And I'm all about plugging financial leaks, helping people keep more of what they make, finding where they have financial blind spots and eliminating those so that they actually can enjoy life along the way, create a life they don't want to retire from, even though they could, because they have financial independence in a much shorter period of time when it's more about, wealth acceleration and cash flow, not just accumulation. So that's kind of the quickest rendition I could probably give of the differences there, right?
Yeah, it's spot on. And especially when we're shooting this is a week before the election. It's a crazy economic time. We don't know what's going to happen here in the next week or so. But man, when I saw Elon Musk, step on stage and announce to the world that he could work with Trump's cabinet and reduce the government spending by $2 trillion. And he was talking about the inefficiencies in government, which I think we're all very, unfortunately, aware of. But one of the things that caught my mind is how many of our doctors, when we do some of their bookkeeping and financial accounting, we start noticing inefficiency stacking, where they've signed up for stuff or they're spending money in places that really is inefficient. It's not like they're paying more taxes than they should be paying. And those are things I learned from you when I got to go through your process originally about 15 years ago. And it put me on a trajectory, Garrett, that changed my life. I always dreamed of being able to travel the world with my kids, be able to expose them to cultures and experiences. I wanted a wealthy life, and I was stuck in a rut like a lot of our doctors who unfortunately believe that I just got to go to the office and I can take maybe a week off vacation a year, but more than that, I lose too much money, and they get stuck in this grind.
Yeah.
And it's this mindset that we're almost chained to our practice. And it wasn't a very healthy way to live. And I want to just, as we go into these principles today, I hope the community knows that as I broke free from those, it was in my head. It was my belief system. It was how I was utilizing my accountants and my financial systems inefficient. And as I started putting those in place and applying the principles that Garrett taught, happy to say for the last 4 years, I've been able to take my kids around the globe. It's been amazing, amazing. So what are the principles our community needs to understand to really start this process of understanding how do you be wealthy now and later, thinking that it's a choice, one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many parallels there are with health and wealth. I mean, when we think about chiropractic, it's people getting regular adjustments to stay on course with their health. And if they neglect that and wait until they have disease or chronic pain, often they're like, okay, now I need to do something about it. And it could take a long time to unwind, where they could have just made adjustments along the way. I would call that course corrections versus forced corrections. Most people have forced corrections of their finances when they neglect cash flow, when they get a huge tax bill one day and they're like, oh crap, I wasn't prepared for this and I don't have the cash set aside for this. And so really what I'm looking to do is create these adjustments where people can keep a lot more of what they make. As you know, there's 4 I's to efficiency. The IRS, most docs are overpaying the government. Number 2, interest. There's ways you can structure loans. There's ways that you can negotiate better interest rates. There's ways you can determine whether you should allocate funds to pay something off or keep it earning for you. And then there's investments. There's a lot of hidden fees. There's a lot of small things that, add up to big dollars over time. And then finally, insurance. There's a lot of duplicate coverages or improper structure. So IRS, insurance, interest, and investments, these are areas where you can simply plug those leaks and keep more of what you make. That's number 1. Number 2, there's just knowing where we're at. It's like when I went to your office, I got x-rays so that we could see what was going on. And most people don't really have a financial x-ray, so they don't know where they're set. And when we don't know where we're set financially, that can actually create unnecessary fear and doubt in our mind that starts to sabotage our success, or at minimum our peace of mind, because we're just not sure. And some incidents happen, like, oh, I don't know if I have that handled. Number 2, when we know where we're not set, we know specifically what to pay attention to address. Fuzzy targets don't get hit. So now we're like, okay, well, these are the things that aren't handled. And then here's what's critically important: our blind spots, those areas lurking in the future that we just don't know that we don't know, that can end up confiscating wealth or taking longer to get where we want to go. With just simple savvy, with simple insight and being able to see it, we can make completely different choices, because we're all in store for financial surprises. It's just that 90+% of those financial surprises don't have to harm us if we just have the proper planning. So the good news is, when we have conversations like this, it's not about waiting for 30 years or tightening the belt or cutting out, traveling the world with your kids. It's about beginning by saying, where can we find money? And when we find that money, could we allocate some of that to quality of life? Could we allocate some of that to improve the business? Could we allocate some of that to improve cash flow? It isn't just about locking it away till 59 and a half, which so many people, I think, don't face their finances because they don't want that bad news of, hey, lower lifestyle. Hey, just wait longer. Hey, one day, someday you can finally enjoy life. Like I said, when you're probably too old to enjoy it at the same level. So I don't want people to miss out on memories along the way. And most importantly, I think it's pretty frustrating when you find out money's being lost. It's almost like it's stolen, it's confiscated, it's leaking through your very fingers, money that's rightfully yours. You're working hard for it, and it's going to Wall Street, it's going to the government, it's going to banks and institutions. And if you want to see the evidence of this, you just look at any downtown of any big city, and guess what is? The biggest buildings are those institutions. The biggest employer in the nation is the government. It's the government. They're far bigger than the founding fathers ever imagined it would be, and it's so inefficient. And so the reality is, this is your money. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do a little bit of work to see where it is? Just like, what would you tell a patient that was going through this situation? They're like, well, I don't know if I'm feeling too much pain right now. I think I'm doing okay. I think my health's all right. But you've seen what they're facing. You see where they have issues, where their curvature is, where they what their digestion might be. There's so many factors you could be seeing that maybe there's just small symptoms. And we're here to help you address it now. We're here to help you address it so that you have a better life now and in the future. Wealth now, wealth in the future. This is the formula.
Mm. Yeah, everything you're saying resonates 100%. I mean, it's so connected to the way we see health and how important it is that we start approaching our wealth with the same process. And this is what's kind of scary for some of our docs, is that the same conditioning that you've had around money is the same conditioning your patients have had around health. They believe that, pills, potions, and lotions are the first line of defense for getting you healthy. And we know that that's not true. And so one of those things that we do for our clients in the data-driven practice, we do basically what's called a cash flow blueprint. We are able to extract their data and look at inefficiencies in the business. And a lot of the times, because these doctors are thinking in terms of just patient outcomes, I got to get patient outcomes. I violated so many financial profit levers in the name of getting patient outcomes rather than getting the business right so that there was money to invest in better patient outcomes. So when we show them, for most of them, it's 20 to 200% increase in cash flow. If a doctor was able to write their business, so it was producing 20 to 200% more cash flow, what's the first thing that you would do with them to start writing their financial situations?
So once you improve cash flow, the key is that we've got to set up some automated systems. And the automated systems is automatically save, deliberately invest. So there's a thing called Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law was initially tested with time. It was giving someone something to do by a certain time, and they found that they waited till the last minute to get it done because it wasn't integrated. There was no, schedule. So then they tested that with money. And what happened is when there was an increase in income, expenses rose to meet or exceed that increase within 3 to 6 months. So by simply creating wealth capture account, just a separate account that automatically somebody starts going into, now you've captured the wealth. Then it's about being deliberate where to invest that. And so we would ask first, is there people, process, or procedure in the business that would make sense to help you get where you want to go? Like, could you buy back your time? Now that you have this additional cash, would a hire allow you to actually do more highly skilled things that would actually increase your income? And what would that hire look like? Because you now have found money for that. And when there's found money, we'd also say even having an A-teamer that truly just takes things completely off your plate in mind could exponentially increase. Or process, is there any systems that you could integrate, just like Blue IQ, that helps you to make sure that you're on track and do what you want? Or is there any technology you need to add, like equipment or things like that, to the practice? So we would look to the practice first, and then we would make sure that B, do you have enough liquidity that gives you peace of mind? So that way, if there's a cash flow crunch or a health issue or a major overhaul in your business, you've got some staying power. So a lot of people rush too quickly to invest in other things. Then the third piece is, I would go back and say, hey, just like you found 20 to 200% more cash flow here, let's take some of this money and let's go back and look at the last 3 years' taxes. Did you miss and overpay any of your taxes? I mean, if you miss these things in your business, there's a high chance that you miss these things in your finances. And so tax and going back 3 years and looking at the current year tax strategy would be the very first thing. Then second, we would look and say, is there any restructuring of loans that would actually improve cash flow further? And then we look at investments and say, is there a way to protect the downside? Is there any underperforming investments? We have higher interest rate loans that would improve cash flow immediately. And then we look at insurance. Are you inefficient with that? Are you insuring just the catastrophic, or are you exposed? Are you paying too much for things? And then we'd actually add more fuel to that wealth capture account. And then from there, we would start looking at where to allocate funds and what to do. But, we'd begin with investing in their practice, investing in themselves, building up their liquidity. And then the last piece would be discovering their investor DNA. So they know where to invest and where not to invest, recovering tons of time, eliminating a ton of risk, because risk isn't in the investment, it's in the investor. And so what happens is most people waste a lot of time in distractions disguised as opportunities. They think are good investments that lead them down the wrong road. And all of a sudden, when it doesn't pan out, or when it's not creating cash flow, it derails them from their business. It undermines their confidence. They start to feel frustrated with all this hard work that they did going out the door because they got involved in crypto that didn't work out, or they got involved in real estate where they were over leveraged, or they got involved in some other businesses that have nothing to do with health or their existing business. And when it's delayed, well, it starts to impact them with their patients because it occupies their mind. So it's really about getting completely cleaned up, establishing their entire plan before determining where to allocate the funds.
I hope our audience is soaking that in, because what Garrett just said is so poignant to so many of us it's that fear of missing out, right? Fear of missing out. I should have invested in Tesla at this point. I should have invested in this, tech stock at this point. Um, I would say the majority of my wealth has been built by not getting risky as Garrett is sharing, but investing in exactly what I am comfortable. Like I have certainty around healthcare, whether it's nutrition, whether it's chiropractic services, whether it's building a clinic, whether it's expanding services within a clinic, expanding your network of providers within your clinic. Like I've been there, done that so many times. I have so much certainty around that's what's built my wealth and my empire. And I think that's where our doctors, hopefully through the provider evolution roadmap that we show you guys, that if you could recoup some of this cash, these inefficiencies in your financial life, what if you had a little bit more money to reinvest in yourself or reinvest in your practice or practices that we could scale that?
Well, we want to turn business wealth into personal wealth. And what happens a lot of times is people take their business wealth, which has, good infrastructure or they know how to make money with it, and then they put it into things they know nothing about. Yeah. So there's a lot more risk in it. And in that transfer of moving from business to personal, it's inefficient transfers. There's a bunch of tax that happens. There's a bunch of, things that are working against them. So if we can remove that friction and just say, how do we do this very effectively and efficiently? And instead, on that personal transfer, say, is there some leaks that can actually go back to the business and grow that even faster, as well as take care of yourself, your quality of life? Because this is the interesting thing about finance. Most of finance, when we take it to the lowest common denominator, it's a lot like allopathic medicine. It's very much like, here's a magic product, take this product, it's going to get you wealthy. But if there was a magic product or a magic pill, we would all just have it and we wouldn't have to ever have a conversation like this. The reality is that doesn't exist. And so most people are then told, well, you should budget. And the problem with budgeting is it gets people to think in restraint and reduction. And I want people to be mindful with their cash management. That's why wealth capture is the key. And there's a process to be more efficient versus just cutting back. Because what happens if we get into a mindset of just cutting back, we might cut out productive level expenses, things that would actually add a lot more revenue, a lot more profitability, and actually create a lot more support for our life. And so this is why I think people are reluctant to talk to financial people, is because they think, oh, they're going to ask me to put a bunch of money in mutual funds, tied up in an IRA or 401k till I'm 59 and a half. There's no cash flow along the way. I don't really know what's going on or what's going to happen in the economy or whether it's going to go up or down. And if you take out the top 5 AI stocks, the market's been relatively flat for the last little while. It's been driven by very few stocks, so people don't really know which ones are the next ones to pop. And so they end up just going, I'll just set it aside and I guess I'll see what happens in the future. Well, it doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't need to be about budgeting. It needs to be about wealth capture. It needs to be about efficiency. It needs about plugging financial leaks. It needs about removing blind spots, which doesn't mean you have to reduce your life. Like when we think about the game changer, it's to expand our means. It's so there's productive expenses, and you don't budget productive expenses. You increase them until you until you lose capacity or they're no longer productive. What you eliminate is destructive expenses, things that lead to debt that you don't have an asset attached to, recurring charges that you've never benefited from, vices that you can't control. You manage your lifestyle expenses, which is you just pay cash for the trips and the things that you really enjoy in life, and you address your protective expenses, transferring risk by having proper asset protection and insurances so that you don't have those things derail you or harm your legacy or make you start over, because we all have those unexpected things that come up. And that's the process. It's really so much more simple when we know that 80% of what we think we have to know about finance doesn't actually apply to us. I don't have to know everything about tax liens and hard money lending. I don't have to know about bots that are trading. I don't need to know about options and calls and puts and derivatives. I don't need to know about, mortgage-backed securities. Like there's so many things that we can get involved in the world of finance that's really a distraction because it's not part of our investor DNA. You have a business and a practice that you can grow, and then you capture, protect, and grow that wealth in a way that's consistent and congruent with who you are. Because if you grow your money, but you don't grow yourself, that's what creates risk. And so before trying to speculate with cash or chase returns, I'm all about guarantees, plugging leaks, putting more money in your pocket, comprehensive, cohesive plan, that there's no more money slipping through the cracks, looking at ways that that's going to enhance, improve your life now and in the future. That's a completely different framework. And I can give you a ton of specific examples and things that you can put on the ground within the next month to improve your life, and happy to do that. But I think understanding the formula is really important, just like it's important for your patients that come in that have done nothing but take pills from Big Pharma and go do their annual physical and get pretty basic bad information that hasn't led to health. Like, you've got to explain the alternative. You got to explain how you operate, and then you can actually get really practical with them. So I think we've kind of set the stage of what the differences are, you know?
Yeah, the huge differences. And when I was starting to make some money in my practice and it was starting to pick up some momentum, I felt so like fragmented when it came to who was looking at my tax liabilities. I had no experience in this type of money coming in. I didn't know how much I could spend each month, how much I should be putting away for taxes. I was so afraid that I was like a squirrel, man. I was putting money in account for taxes because I was scared. And it was out of fear and reactivity. And I didn't have anybody who was really like a business strategist who was also looking at tax strategies versus just my, at that time, very not great CPA way back then that was doing basically just saying, hey, do I have all the information I need to do your end of year? And I'm like, I don't know, like, what else should you have? I had no checklist, I had nothing. And you talk about this concept of, before any flight, takes off,
right?
They have a checklist. And when you go through the checklist, we have a certainty that airplane is going to be like it's unbelievable, like the percentage of safety that they've attained. Talk through that concept of a checklist and having like what the wealthy now enjoy, how you wanted to bring that to the common folk.
Yeah, it was interesting. Just a few years ago, I did comedy for a group of billionaires, 20 of them. And then I did a Q&A and that afterwards. And then I got to spend a couple of days with them. And they all have these family offices where they have their financial team that only works for them. And what was interesting is the place that they all started was they spent a substantial amount of money and had a deep team just on tax. And that's just the very first part. And so what I did was, over the last decades, I've just extracted, like, what do these family offices do for people? Like, what are the things that they have handled so that these people could sustain wealth? Because yeah, it's one thing to make money and to get there, it's another thing to stay there. And so I built this checklist, this financial health assessment, based upon how they handled safety and security and money and investing. And it's just like, anytime I get on a flight, I'm not too concerned, because I do know that there's a whole, like, I have some friends that are pilots, and there is all these checklists that they're going through that if they didn't go through, now they're left to their own device. Did we remember everything? And if they didn't remember everything and now they have a problem in the sky, that's a big problem versus having a problem on the ground and addressing it. And this is where most people are with financially. They're kind of in flight, not sure what's going on, and they have too many weaknesses that they couldn't pass a headwind or turbulence. And that's why 95% of financial plans crash. Meaning 95% of the time when people are age 65, US Department of Labor says they're not financially independent in the US, 95%. So it's from a lack of proper knowledge and preparation, not effort. It's not like these people aren't trying. They are saving money, but because they haven't addressed some critical things, those blind spots absolutely set them back. But now when I'm on a flight and there's turbulence, I don't worry about it because I know they've reinforced, like my buddy that's a pilot's like, hey, if the engines go out, we have 4 different contingencies to the point where there's wires where we can move things on the wings with these wires that we pull to help steer the plane as the 4th level contingency. And most people have 1 layer or no contingency whatsoever, this exposure. So I felt like I looked around, I questioned, I was like, I couldn't find firms that had these kind of stress tests and checklists other than family offices, which people had to be worth, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, which chiropractors aren't worth hundreds of millions of dollars typically. So I've been working with chiropractors for a long time, helping them see what this is and then helping them plug the leaks, just like those billionaires were doing, because we can take the same, I don't know if you'd call it technology or philosophy, and say, what if that could appeal or apply to everyone? There are certain things that don't apply to everyone. There are certain private capital deals that billionaires can get that the rest of the world never sees or doesn't touch. So yeah, they probably get double the rate of return on average than what the stock market does. Most of the world's relegated to just what the stock market does, and they kind of take that lower return and go, I guess this is what I'm going to do. Unless you're a business owner. Small businesses, as you've seen, as you've helped people do, can have much higher rates of return than a stock market. Like if a stock market does 10% overall, people are ecstatic about it. We've seen when you look at 20% to 200% improvement in cash flow from going through your program, or for me, an average of $2,484 per month of improved cash flow for every $500,000 of revenue, and that doesn't include tax savings. That's an additional $11,430 per $500,000 on top of that, throwing out the top 10% because it skews the numbers. So this is what's happening is we deserve to have the same information and technology, because when I was in my early 20s, I walked into a family office as a fly on the wall watching another advisor, and I was like, this is amazing. They're around a conference table, the client's not even in the room, they're asking about ownership and tax efficiency and mitigation of risk, and I was like, this is something I've never seen before. And I walked out and I said, what was that? He goes, oh, it's a low tier family office. I'm like, what do you mean low tier? Yeah, if you're worth $30 million, that's kind of their cutoff to be part of them. I'm like, I was in my early 20s. I was like, I don't even know anyone worth $30 million at that age. Yeah. And yet that planted the seed that I've got to bring this to the people that they're first generation entrepreneurs or first generation wealth, and they're not passing on huge legacies, and make that legacy accessible and get the financial house in order so that they don't put the next 10 years of their life into regret because they didn't handle these things, or put their next generation into bondage or entitlement because they didn't address these things. Like, these are critically important financial health conversations that I'm an advocate for. And look, even the detour I did in comedy, that was just so I can make it more engaging and interesting, so that I can help reach people in a way that's super fun for me, because it's a topic that a lot of people are intimidated by. And it doesn't need to be intimidating, because once you see the financial health assessment checklist, you're like, oh, I get it. And part of it is we just have to overcome our own personal judgment. Like, I get it. I had kidney issues last year, and I inherited those kidney issues. I know stress could have exaggerated that, but I was embarrassed to tell people about it. And I did go out and seek help, and I was telling you today, I just met with my biofeedback person. She's like, dude, your kidneys are in such a good place right now. I mean, I'm dialed in with my food and getting adjusted. Like, there's a formula. I know if I'm eating clean proteins that are organic and sweet potatoes and vegetables, and I'm eating a certain number of times per day and healthy fats to give my liver support, like, I can see the blood work change. But if I don't look at the blood work at all, and if I don't, and I don't do these changes, then I go to dialysis, and that's where people are financially. They're on dialysis. They're failing 95% of the time. That dialysis for people financially is Social Security. It's working when they don't want to. It's not having freedom to do what they want to. It's feeling like when they're 80, there's no way to stop, or whatever it might be. Like, we've got to have enough love and compassion for our future self to do the right things today, Yeah,
100%. Because, this is so powerful for our community. Because our community, like being small business owners, and they talk and they share information, I think most of the community, or our members, come into our community already paying themselves a pretty low base pay, so that the government's not taking a ton. Then they take out their monthly or bi-monthly, draw or equity share from the business, so they're not paying so much taxes on that. Most of them are understand like the concepts of we can pay our kids, and it's got to be a fair rate for fair work and how to do that. I think most of them understand we can go on family vacations, but hold a board meeting, or there's ways to have some of your family on your board, as they get older and different things like that. A lot of them kind of understand the Augusta rule, and we can rent out our house, tax free and different things like that. But if you were to drop kind of a gold nugget for our community, and maybe something they're not doing or not as aware of, what would be that strategy they could take away today and start like applying today?
Yeah, a lot of people get decent with deductions, right? So you mentioned Augusta rule, which is the 280G, where you can rent your home out to your business 14 days a year. That's a tax write-off, and you pay yourself personally. You don't have to claim it as personal income. 132J is another one a lot of people miss. I've been to your house. I see you have a pool. All the maintenance on that, you make that available to any company that you have that has employees that you allow to go to that, which some of my companies, only employees are my kids. So I get to write off all the maintenance of my cold plunge, my hot tub, my pool. And those are nice small things, but let's get to the big things. The big thing that most people miss is when you're getting success in your practice, you need a tax attorney. And most people don't have tax attorneys, they have CPAs. And most CPAs are great at filing taxes. That's what their expertise is. They're not always great at reclassifying income. That's what the attorney does. So there's 4 ways to reclassify your income. The first way you mentioned, active to passive income. You can be an S corporation, take a reasonable salary, which is that's what you'd pay another associate, and take the rest in distributions. Distributions avoid the 15.3% self-employment tax. That's great. Here's another way. If you own your practice, meaning you own the physical building, you can rent that out at the highest possible rate based upon comparables, and that comes in without that extra tax too, because that's 1099 income and is a very efficient way to take an income. But the second way is for those that are making even more money. If you're making $650,000 of taxable income, you want to really start looking at, can you turn ordinary income into capital gains? Capital gains is a much lower tax rate, and obviously increasing the value of your business would be one of the ways to do that. And it might even be how you insure your business. Having your own insurance company could be something that you can move money in pre-tax and then actually pull that out as a capital gain. There's ways to do that. And the third thing is tax-free. So tax-free, if you ever plan on selling your practice, and especially with the tax jobs and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, is potentially going to sunset January 1st in 2026, which when I say potentially, you'd have to have Trump win and a Republican House and Senate for that not to sunset. It needs approval from all 3, and there's no indication that everybody's behind that. If that gets sunset, C corporations are going to gain a lot more favor, because C corporations pay less tax on the first part. Yes, there's a double tax if you pay the corporate tax and the personal tax. But one thing you need to know is if you sell your practice, if it's been around for 5 years, you can use Section 1202 and sell a C Corp for tax-free up to $10 million per partner. So tax-free is a major advantage if you set up the corporations right, or how you sell your business beforehand. There's charitable trust strategies if you're charitable in nature, but maybe where you capture your wealth using insurance, so you have a death benefit that gives you a way to donate your money and then replenish it to your heirs when you die, but actually increase your cash flow 20, 30, 40, 50% on the sale of your assets, because there'd be no tax, and you get to benefit from the sale of the asset before you give to the charity. The charity gets the money when you die. So that's a charitable trust. And the fourth thing is tax arbitrage. Like, I just bought a bunch of artwork, because I've done this multiple times. I'm going to be putting up at my house when we eventually sit down with my art dealer and figure out which art we're going to put up here. But after 3 years, I get to donate it to museums, and I get $2 back for every dollar I spent. Tax arbitrage is you spend $1, you get $2 back. Most people submit $1, they get 35 cents back, 37 cents at best, and that's the tax tail wagging the dog. So reclassifying our income is something that most people miss out on because their attorney and their accountant don't communicate, or their attorney doesn't know tax, they just know how to set up corporations, and they're not considering tax implications as much as just liability and asset protection, which is critical, but we want to look at this bigger picture. Those are just a few pieces. And I mean, I've seen other issues on people missing, like, I know that you've heavily invested in your business in the past, Cory. Like, there might be years where you had so many operational expenses that it phases out your write-offs. Well, there's a way to mix and match high profit years with high expense years through net operating losses and go back and amend returns and get more deductions. Or, we're losing some of the R&D credits that were there in the past. We used to get a lot of those for chiropractors, and you go back and amend your returns. But there's just so much out there, and everything I'm talking about is down the fairway. I don't teach people international tax strategy that moves their money offshore and then creates a red flag. I don't do anything that you won't be able to sleep easily at night and know that if you're ever audited, it's going to pass with flying colors. Like, these are just right down the fairway. But unfortunately, people just miss them because they're not trained to look for them, and it requires coordination of more than one person. And a lot of people don't collaborate enough to get these things done. And so we've got great tax firms, more than one, that we utilize and work with to kind of figure out ways to get money back for people and improve their cash flow.
Yeah, this is what I want our community to really understand and have access to. One of my early visions in building my clinic was a holistic version of kind of the Mayo Clinic, where a patient could come in with real chronic issues. We specialized in patients who said they'd tried everything, and have a team of physicians that could sit down and look at their blood work, their x-rays, their MRIs, their CAT scans, all of their diagnostics, and together from all of their different strengths, treatment plan on how that patient needed to be handled and move forward. And what we built ended up becoming the largest holistic healthcare center in the state of Utah. It was amazing, and I was blessed to actually have you come through that process. You're telling me that you've built that concept from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, and look, I've made it more affordable than I used to in the past. It used to be like, people had to pay 25 grand often, or 50 grand sometimes, or at the low end, like 8,500 down and $500 a month. And so I've been in the lab for the last several years being like, how do I make this accessible and more affordable so that we can impact more people? And it takes a while to build those networks out, but I built a multiplier community, and you're part of that. I teach every single week on either grow your income, keep more of your money, grow your money, or grow yourself. I've got a little resource and implementation guide, and then we've got the financial network to support the concepts that we teach, and multiple people in different arenas, so that based upon that person's individual experience, we know how to kind of connect them to those individuals. And I'm the one that's teaching it. I haven't substituted that out with anyone else teaching it. I love doing it. It's like one of my favorite things to do each week. And for some, maybe they're not ready to jump right into that program, but if they are, they can email Bobby at GarrettGunderson.com and have a conversation with Bobby and see if it's a fit for them. But for those that are going, well, I just want to look at like these things I'm talking about today and where they have financial leaks, they can do a cash recovery. Like a guy that was CEO of my company and my head coach is doing those sessions, either my partner or the head coach. So they're getting the top of the top to sit down with them in a one-on-one session. The investment's $1,000. You're not smiling from ear to ear at the end of that. We'll give you back your $1,000 and I'll shoot you $500 of my own money for your time, because we're just here to really build a relationship and help. But if people want to do that, it's GarrettGunderson.com/Frogly. And check it out. Like, I know some people, like they're waiting for election. They think that they're too busy. There's never a good time. We're always busy. It's just a matter of how much longer do you want the government to take more than their fair share? How much longer do you want to give Wall Street money that's rightfully yours? How many days would you like that money to be lost and leaking versus back into your life? I mean, that's what we've traded, is the process to support that. And I know it's a decent investment. It's not like the biggest investment, but people know me, Cory, like it's like, I'm just trying to make it as affordable, but there's gotta be skin in the game. If I gave it to people for free, like I've got hard expenses in it. And ultimately, we got to pay the accountants, we got to pay the coaches. So I just made it where it's as inexpensive as possible to help someone get on track and understand what they're capable of. They could even go implement with their own team if they wanted after that, or they could say, hey, I want to know more about Multiplier, and could I jump in with you and your team?
That's incredible. I've been through it, and $1,000 is nothing. I mean, it's nothing. We're giving that to the government, you guys. How often? Like you're writing that check over and over and over to the government. What if you wrote it one time and then actually recouped a bunch of that money that you've been giving away? That
Yeah,
is what Garrett is offering.
and I'll bonus the financial health assessment. So if they do that, they'll get the financial health assessment. So they go and, I mean, that doesn't take too long to go through, like 20 minutes, and they'll know exactly where they're set, where they're not set, and where their blind spots are. Plus, they can have a conversation in the cash recovery about what they discovered in that, financial health assessment. And I've got really short, succinct, powerful videos to guide them through that financial health assessment. So there's a little bit of the one-on-one attention with the checklist. So it's either that or, you either like the government more than me, or I don't know, like you're giving them the money. I'd rather, take a small piece, give you a whole bunch more, and, they'll still have plenty. Sometimes you're like, well, we got to give the government money. Well, they haven't done well with it. They're almost $36 trillion in debt. And look, even if you stop paying so much in income tax, remember you have to pay property tax, you have to pay to drive, you have to pay to work because there's self-employment tax, and you have to pay to eat because there's sales tax. There's so many excise taxes that are on us. We're paying plenty. So, but there's no reason to tip the government. That's like tipping a waiter at 37.5% of your meal and peed in your soup. Like, stop tipping them. Just put that money back into your life and in your pocket.
There's that humor for you. Dude, I love it. I love it. And this year, for those of you who don't know, we incorporated the multiplier program in with our Octo Inner Circle services. So our Octo Inner Circle has been going through the multiplier events, and every week we're meeting with Garrett. He is taking your finances and bringing it down to I would maybe call them compartments of your life, from relationships to the way you're spending your time on hobbies, to the way you're spending time investing in yourself, he really breaks it down to everyday things that you can absolutely start incorporating that will put you on a track to these products. The two products we're talking about: how to be wealthy now, how to be wealthy later. And you can actually do both by applying these holistic financial principles. It's insane. So there's that. That's what he's talking about. We're now opening up the multiplier opportunity for our entire community to come be a part of it. It's not included in our programs like it is in the OIC, but you do get incredible bonuses and value coming in to be a part of Garrett's opportunity. And it starts with this opportunity to do this cash flow recovery. For $1,000, you guys, that is nothing compared to what you're going to be able to walk away from understanding and recouping from your past taxes, your inefficiencies that they're going to find, the checklist that you're going to get. It's going to be a game changer. And this is why I'm heavily endorsing and wanting to give this opportunity to you guys, because it will change your life. It changed mine. It put me on a completely different financial path. And Garrett, from the bottom of my heart, I got to say thank you for all you've done for me and my family.
Thanks for, all that you've done for us too. Like, my wife doesn't ever want anyone else to adjust her. And she's like, hey, you need to get us, even if we have to go to Cory's house, we're getting him to still work on us. And so we appreciate what you've done for us too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, been an honor. Guys, if you've liked this, please share this. If you're watching the replay, please share this with all of our social media channels onto yours. Share this with your friends. Let your colleagues know. Don't be stingy, right? Don't be selfish with this information. Let them know about this, because you've got friends that you know are struggling financially, that if they would just change their mindset, apply a few principles, it could completely change their trajectory. And they would come to you with gratitude, thanking you for introducing them to this information. This has been In the Blue with Garrett Gunderson and Cory Frogley. Thanks for being a part of this. Garrett and I were talking before this. There's so much content around this that we want to share with you guys that we'll be doing more of these events. If you'd like to hear more, please comment below. More content, please. And Garrett and I will continue to collaborate. Thanks, everybody. Be in the blue. Stay driven.